Captain Lee Minho was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. The hot liquid spilled across his desk as he jumped to his feet. Red warning lights flashed throughout Kepler Station, turning the white corridors into a nightmare of shadows and blood-colored light. Captain, to the bridge. Emergency alert. All hands to battle stations. The voice of Lieutenant Park Sora crackled through the comm system. Her usual calm tone carried an edge of fear that made Minho's stomach tighten. He ran through the corridors of the research station, his boots pounding against the metal floors. Scientists and technicians pressed themselves against the walls as he passed. Their faces showed the same question that hammered in his mind. What could threaten them out here in the middle of nowhere? The bridge of Kepler Station was small compared to a military vessel. It served mainly to monitor the research work and maintain communication with Earth Command. When Minho burst through the doors, he found Park hunched over the sensor array, her fingers dancing across the controls. "Report," Minho ordered, sliding into the captain's chair. 12 Warthog battlecruisers just dropped out of hyperspace, Park said without looking up. "They're surrounding us. Distance approximately 50,000 kilometers and closing fast." Minho felt his blood turn to ice. 12 battlecruisers against their single research station with its basic defensive shields and 2 small laser cannons. The odds were so bad they were almost funny. Almost. "Any word from command?" he asked, already knowing the answer would not be good. Park's face went pale. "I sent the distress signal. Command responds that the nearest fleet is 3 days away. They're sending everything they can, but he did not need to finish. 3 days might as well be 3 years. Minho stared at the tactical display. Red dots showed the Vorthok ships forming a perfect circle around their station. The enemy was taking their time, probably enjoying the sight of trapped prey. The Vorthok were known throughout the galaxy as efficient killers. They did not leave. "Survivors. What did they want?" Minho asked. "The navigation data," Park replied immediately. "Has to be. We're the only station in this sector with complete hyperspace maps of the Centauri route. If they get that information, they can move there. The entire fleet behind Allied lines." The Centauri route was the secret hyperspace pathway that allowed human ships to avoid Vorthok patrols. Losing it would mean losing the war. Millions of human lives depended on keeping that data safe. "How many people do we have on station?" Minho asked. 47 total. 32 scientists, 8 technicians, 5 security guards, you and me." Park's voice was steady now. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the console. Minho closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, his expression had changed. Park had seen that look before during training exercises. It was the look Minho got when he started thinking like a soldier instead of a research station commander. "Send a message to all non-essential personnel. Begin evacuation procedures immediately. Load everyone onto the emergency pods and launch them toward the asteroid belt. Maybe some of them can hide until help arrives." "What about the essential personnel?" Park asked. "You're looking at them," Minho said. "You and me. We're staying." Park nodded without hesitation. C had served with Minho for 2 years. She knew he would never abandon his post, and she would never abandon him. The next hour passed in a blur of activity. Scientists grabbed their most important research and packed into the small escape pods. The pods were designed for emergency evacuation, not long-term survival. But they were the only chance these people had. Dr. Kim Tae-young, the head researcher, was the last to leave. He grabbed Minho's arm before entering his pod. "The navigation data is in the main computer core," he said urgently. "The Vorthok get it, ... They won't," Minho promised. "Go. Get these people out of here." The last escape pod disappeared into space. Minho and Park stood alone on the bridge. The The station felt empty and cold around them. 47 people had become 2 in less than an hour. The Vorlok are hailing us, Park reported. Put them on screen. The main display flickered to life, showing the bridge of a Warthog battlecruiser. General Dexfer filled the screen. He was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. His black eyes stared at them without emotion. Human vessel, the general said in perfect English. Shu will surrender immediately and transfer all navigation data to our ships. Comply and your deaths would be quick. Minho stood up slowly. He straightened his uniform and looked directly into the camera. This is Captain Lee Minho of Kepler Station. I reject your demand. This station is under the protection of the Human Alliance, and I will defend it with my life. The general's expression did not change, but one of his 4 hands tapped against his chair. It was a sign of amusement among his species. Captain, you have 47 people on that station. I have 12 battlecruisers with a total crew of 60,000. Your resistance is meaningless. 45 people just left in escape pods, Minho replied calmly. There are 2 of us remaining. Your move, General. For the first time, the general looked surprised. 2 people. You plan to defend an entire station with 2 people. That's right. The general leaned forward in his chair. This is some kind of trick. Where are your hidden defenses? Where are your backup forces? Minho smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. You're looking at them. Screen went black as the general cut the connection. A moment later, the first wave of Vorthok fighters appeared on the tactical display, racing toward the station. So, Park said, sliding into the weapons control seat. What's the plan, Captain? Minho cracked his knuckles and moved to the engineering station. We're going to show them why humans don't need backup, he said. We're going to make them regret every hearing of our species. The first enemy fighters opened fire, their energy beams splashing harmlessly against the station's shields. But Minho was already working, his fingers flying over the controls as he accessed systems that were never meant to be weapons. The real battle was about to begin. The first wave of Vorthok fighters came in fast and hard. Their plasma cannons lit up space with deadly fire as they dove toward Kepler Station. Captain Lee Minho watched them on the tactical display, his hands moving across controls that had never been designed for combat. Shields holding at 90%, Lieutenant Park Sora reported from her station. But they won't last long against that kind of firepower. Minho nodded and activated the station's gravitational wave generator. The massive device was normally used to study black holes and neutron stars. Today, it would serve a different purpose. Firing. Gravity pulse in 3, 2, 1. Minho announced. Space around the station twisted and bent as invisible waves of gravitational force rippled outward. The Vorthok fighters suddenly found their instruments going crazy. Their targeting computers could not lock onto the station through the distorted space. Direct hit on Fighter Group Alpha, Park called out with excitement. Think breaking off their attack run. But Minho was already working on the next problem. The Vorthok battlecruisers were moving closer, preparing to launch ground troops. Once enemy soldiers got inside the station, the gravity waves would not help them. Park, I need you to reroute power from the research labs to the environmental systems, Minho ordered, and activate the emergency lockdown protocols. Sir, that will seal off most of the station. We'll be trapped in here too. That's the idea, Minho replied with a grim smile. Okay, if they want this station, they're going to have to fight for every corridor. The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity. Kark's fingers danced over her controls as she sealed blast doors throughout the station and rerouted power systems. Minho converted the hydroponics-based growth lights into improvised laser weapons and rigged the coffee maker in the officer's mess to explode when activated. Captain, I'm reading multiple transport ships launching from the battlecruisers, Park reported. Looks like at least 200 Vorthok soldiers heading our way. Mino checked his sidearm and grabbed a toolkit from under his station. Time to go mobile. Can you handle communications from the maintenance tunnels? Spark pulled a portable comm unit from her station and slung it over her shoulder. Lead the way, sir. They left the bridge just as the first Vorthok transport ships attached to the station's docking ports. The sound of cutting tools echoed through the corridors as enemy soldiers began burning through the airlock doors. Min-Ho led Park through a hidden panel into the maintenance tunnels that ran throughout the station. These narrow passages allowed access to power cables, water pipes, and air ducts. They were cramped and uncomfortable, but they would keep the two humans hidden from the invading army. First team is through the main airlock, Park whispered into her comm unit. I can track them on the internal sensors, okay? Min-Ho studied the schematic display on his toolkit. 20 Vorthok soldiers were moving down the main corridor toward the bridge. Okay? They moved in perfect formation, checking each room as they advanced. They fight like they're on parade, Min-Ho muttered. No imagination. Okay. He crawled through the tunnel until he reached a junction box above the main corridor. Squirking quickly, he rewired the lighting controls and connected them to the station's emergency power system. When I give the signal, shut off life support to Section 7, he told Park. The Vorthok soldiers passed directly beneath them, their heavy boots clanking on the metal floor. Min-Ho waited until they were halfway down the corridor, then activated his improvised trap. Every light in the section exploded at once, showering the aliens with sparks and broken glass. In the same instant, Park cut the life support. The corridor filled with toxic gas from the air recycling system. The Vorthok soldiers began choking and stumbling in the darkness. Several of them fired their weapons blindly, hitting their own comrades in the confusion. Section 7 is clear, Park reported with satisfaction. That's 20 down. Their victory was short-lived. More transport ships were docking with the station, and the Vorthok were adapting to human tactics. The second wave of soldiers came equipped with breathing masks and portable lights. Min-Ho and Park retreated deeper into the maintenance tunnels. They could hear enemy troops moving through the corridors above and below them, searching for the human defenders. I've got an idea, Park whispered. The hydroponics bay has an automated watering system. If I can access the controls remotely, I can flood the lower levels. Do it, Min-Ho agreed. I'll create a distraction. He crawled through the tunnels until he reached the station's main computer core. The Vorthok had not found it yet, but they were getting close. Min-Ho could hear them setting up equipment in nearby rooms, working as quietly as possible. He accessed the station's automated systems. With a few keystrokes, he programmed the cleaning robots to activate and begin their daily routines. Throughout the station, dozens of small robots emerged from their charging bays and began moving through the corridors. The Vorthok soldiers panicked, thinking they were under attack by military drones. They opened fire on the harmless cleaning bots, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions, while the enemy was distracted. Park activated the hydroponics watering system. Water began pouring through the station's lower levels, making the floor slippery and shorting out electrical systems. That's another 30 soldiers out of action, Park reported. They're retreating to higher ground. Min-Ho grinned in the darkness of the maintenance tunnel. The Vorthok had superior numbers and better weapons, but they had never faced an enemy like this. They were used to conventional battles with clear front lines and predictable tactics. Humans fought differently. They used every advantage, no matter how small. They turned everyday objects into weapons and made the battlefield itself their ally. Kark, can you access the officers' mess remotely? Min-Ho asked. Yes, sir. Why? 'Cause some Vorthok soldiers just entered that room, and I want to give them a warm welcome. Park's fingers moved over her portable controls. In the officers' mess 3 levels below, the coffee maker activated with a cheerful beep. The Vorthok soldiers looked at it curiously for exactly 2 seconds before it exploded, filling the room with boiling coffee and metal fragments. "This is insane," Park whispered, but she was smiling. "We're actually winning." Okay, Minho checked his chronometer. They had been fighting for 2 hours, and the Vorthok had lost almost half their ground troops. But more ships kept arriving, and eventually the humans would run out of tricks. "We need to contact that Vorthok general," Minho decided. "It's time for a conversation." General Dexfer stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the tactical display in disbelief. The numbers made no sense. His forces had been fighting on Kepler Station for 4 hours, and the casualty reports kept getting worse. "Report," he ordered his tactical officer. "Sir, we have lost 93 soldiers, 3 dropships destroyed, 2 more damaged beyond repair. The humans continue to resist from unknown positions." The general's forehands clenched into fist. 93 dead against 2 humans on a research station. His species had conquered 12 worlds using conventional tactics. This should have been over in minutes. "Where are they hiding?" he demanded. "Have our troops found their command center?" "No, sir. The humans appear to be moving throughout the station using maintenance tunnels. Every time our soldiers enter a room, they trigger some kind of trap or ambush." General Dexfer had fought against the Zelani Empire and their warrior culture. He had defeated the robotic armies of the Tecton Collective, but he had never encountered an enemy like this. The humans fought without honor, without formation, without any recognizable strategy. "Sir," his communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human station." "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what looked like a maintenance corridor. Captain Lee Minho sat cross-legged on the floor, looking completely relaxed despite the battle raging around him. Behind him, Lieutenant Park. Sora worked at a portable computer terminal. General Dexfer Minho said politely, "I thought we should talk." The general leaned forward in his command chair. "Captain, you have caused me considerable inconvenience. My offer still stands. Surrender now, and your death will be quick." Minho smiled. "Actually, I wanted to discuss your surrender." Several officers on the Vorthok bridge made sounds of outrage. The general raised one hand for silence, his black eyes fixed on the human captain. "My surrender," he repeated slowly. "Captain, I have 11 battlecruisers remaining and over 5,000 soldiers. You have yourself and 1 assistant hiding in air ducts like rats." "That's true," Minho agreed. "But you've been fighting us for 4 hours, and you still don't control the station. At this rate, how long do you think it will take you to actually win?" The general did quick calculations in his head. At the current rate of casualties, he would lose his entire ground force before securing the station. Even with 5,000 soldiers, the numbers were troubling. "What are you proposing?" he asked. "A meeting," Minho replied, "face to face. You can bring 2 bodyguards. We'll meet in the central hub of the station." 1 hour. "This is obviously a trap," Minho shrugged. "Everything is a trap, General. The question is whether you're curious enough to spring it." The transmission ended, leaving the Vorthok bridge in stunned silence. General Dexfer stared at the blank screen, trying to understand what kind of enemy he was facing. "Sir," his tactical officer said carefully, "surely you're not considering this meeting?" "I am," the general replied. "I need to see these humans for myself. I need to understand how 2 individuals are holding an entire station against my army." 1 hour later, General Dexter stepped through the airlock into Kepler Station's central hub. The large circular room served as the heart of the research facility, with corridors branching off in 6 directions. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow. 2 Vorthok soldiers flanked the general, their weapons ready. They had expected to find a heavily fortified position with hidden gun emplacements and defensive barriers. Instead, they found Captain Minho and Lieutenant Park sitting at a small table in the center of the room. There were 4 chairs around the table and a pot of coffee brewing on a portable heater. General Minho said, standing up. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down. Would you like some coffee?" Dexter stared at them. These were the 2 humans who had destroyed his dropships, killed nearly 100 of his soldiers, and turned his carefully planned invasion into a nightmare of confusion and casualties. They looked so ordinary. Minho appeared to be in his 30s, of average height and build. Kark was younger, perhaps in her 20s, with short black hair and intelligent eyes. Neither of them looked like they could defeat a single Vortok warrior in combat, let alone an entire army. "Where are your hidden defenses?" the general demanded, not moving toward the table. "Where are your backup forces?" General Minho said patiently. "Please sit down. We really should talk." Against his better judgment, Vexper approached the table. His bodyguards remained standing, their weapons trained on the humans. The general sat down across from Minho, his 4 eyes studying every detail of the man's face. "I will ask you again," the general said slowly. "Where are your backup forces?" Minho poured himself a cup of coffee and offered the pot to Park. She accepted it with a nod and filled her own cup. Neither human seemed concerned about the 2 armed soldiers pointing weapons at them. General Minho said finally, "You keep asking about backup forces. I keep telling you the truth. You're looking at them." "It's possible," Vexper snapped. 2 individuals cannot hold a military position against thousands of trained soldiers. You must have hidden troops, automated defenses, something. Park spoke for the first time. "General, have you studied human military history?" "Of course not. Why would I waste time on the tactics of a primitive species?" "That's your first mistake," she said calmly. "Humans don't fight the way other species fight. We don't rely on superior numbers or better technology. We adapt. We improvise. We use everything around us as a weapon." "Impossible," the general repeated. "Individual soldiers cannot be that effective." Minho leaned back in his chair. "General, in human history, there are countless examples of small forces defeating much larger armies. We have stories of single warriors holding bridges against hundreds of enemies. We have accounts of small groups using terrain and tactics to defeat armies 10 times their size. Myths and legends." Dexter dismissed. "Harthy," Park asked, "your casualty reports say otherwise." The general fell silent. He had studied the reports. His soldiers described attacks that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Traps that used the station's own systems against them. Ambushes that appeared and disappeared like ghosts. "How?" he asked finally. "Hey, how do you do it?" Minho smiled. "We think differently, General, okay? When you look at this station, you see a target to be captured. When we look at it, we see a weapon to be used. Every system, every room, every piece of equipment becomes part of our defense," Park added. "The coffee maker becomes a bomb. The cleaning robots become a distraction. The water system becomes a flood trap." General Dexter sat in silence, trying to process what he was hearing. These humans had turned their entire environment into a battlefield where they held every advantage. "You cannot win," he said, finally. "Eventually, you will run out of tricks." "Maybe," Minho agreed. "But how many more of your soldiers are you willing to lose finding out?" General Dexter stared across the table at Captain Lee. Minho and Lieutenant Barksora, the silence stretched between them like a taut wire. Finally, the general spoke. "Explain it to me," he said. "Explain how your species fights." Minho took a sip of his coffee before answering. "Their species fight in formations, okay? They have clear ranks, established tactics, predictable strategies. They bring overwhelming force to guarantee victory. That is how civilized warfare is conducted." "The general replied. "Maybe," Minho said, "but humans learned warfare on a world where we were never the strongest, never the fastest, never the most dangerous predator, okay? We survived by being smarter, more adaptable, more willing to take risks that other creatures would avoid. Cock leaned forward. General, when you planned this attack, what did you expect to find? A research station with standard defenses. Probably 50 to 100 soldiers. Basic weapons, conventional resistance. Okay, but you found 2 people who turned your invasion into a nightmare, Park continued. Every assumption you made was wrong, because you assumed we would fight like your species fights. The general's tactical officer spoke through his communicator. Sir, we have another problem. The humans have somehow accessed our fleet communications. They're listening to our command frequencies. Vexfer's eyes widened. How is that possible? Our encryption is military grade. Park smiled and held up a small device. While you were fighting phantoms in the corridors, I was in the maintenance tunnels, splicing into your communication relays. Your ships have been broadcasting their positions and strategies for the past 2 hours. Impossible, the general breathed. You would need specialized equipment, trained technicians, access to our ship designs. I'm a communications officer, Park said simply. I know how communication systems work. It doesn't matter if they're human or Vorthok. The principles are the same. Minho set down his coffee cup. That's the difference between us, General. Here people specialize. You have soldiers who fight, technicians who repair, officers who plan. Each person has one job, and they do only that job. Efficiency through specialization, the general said. It is the foundation of advanced civilization. Maybe, Minho replied, but humans cross-train. Every soldier knows basic engineering. Every technician understands combat tactics. Every officer can repair equipment if needed. We're not as efficient, but we're more flexible. As if to prove his point, Park suddenly stood up and walked to a wall panel. She opened it and began working on the circuits inside. What are you doing? One of the Vorthok bodyguards demanded, raising his weapon. Relax, Park said, without looking up. I'm just making a small adjustment to the station's communication array. Her fingers moved quickly over the wires and components. Within moments, she had completed her work and closed the panel. There, she said, returning to her seat. I've just given myself access to your flagship's navigation computer. General Dexfer felt a chill run through his body. You're bluffing. It's Park's portable computer chimed softly. She turned the screen toward the general, showing detailed schematics of his flagship's interior layout. Deck 7, Section 12, she read aloud. That's where you're standing right now, isn't it, General? The bridge of the Vorthok battlecruiser. Terror's Edge. The general's communicator crackled to life. Sir, we have a security breach. Someone has accessed our main computer systems. Deck's voice stared at Park in amazement. While sitting at a table drinking coffee, this young human woman had somehow infiltrated his most secure military systems. How long? He asked quietly. How long? What? Park replied. How long have you had access to our ships? Since about 10 minutes after you arrived, she said. I've been downloading your fleet positions, weapon specifications, and tactical plans. Very thorough documentation, by the way. Your people keep excellent records. Minho nodded approvingly. While your soldiers were searching for us room by room, Park was gathering intelligence on your entire fleet. We know which ships are damaged, which captains are inexperienced, which vessels are carrying your most important equipment. The general felt his world shifting beneath him. Why are you telling me this? 'Cause the real battle hasn't started yet, Minho said. Everything that's happened so far was just reconnaissance. We've been learning about your tactics, your technology, your weaknesses. What do you mean? Dexter asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. Park's computer chimed again. She glanced at the screen and smiled. Human fleet has arrived at the edge of the system. 3 ships. They're requesting tactical data on enemy positions. The general's bodyguards looked at each other nervously. 3 human ships against 11. Vorthok battlecruisers should have been an easy victory for the alien fleet. But after everything they had witnessed, nothing seemed certain anymore. 3 ships cannot defeat 11, the general said, but his voice lacked conviction. Normally, you'd be right, Minho agreed. But these 3 ships are being commanded by Captain Jin Daeho. He's been studying the intelligence reports Park has been sending. He knows exactly where your ships are, what weapons they carry, and which ones have been damaged by our little diversions. What diversions? Dexford demanded. Park held up another small device. While you were focused on the ground assault, I've been sending false maintenance requests to your fleet. 3 of your battlecruisers have powered down there, main weapons for routine cleaning. 2 others have moved out of formation to investigate fake distress signals. Your fleet is scattered and vulnerable, Minho continued. Captain Jin won't attack where you're strong. He'll hit your weakest ships first, using the intelligence we've provided to exploit every advantage. General Dexfer stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is impossible. No species fights this way. Humans do, Park said calmly. We've been fighting this way for thousands of years. We call it asymmetric warfare. We don't try to match your strengths. We create our own advantages. The general's communicator erupted with urgent voices. Sir, human ships are attacking. They knew exactly where to hit us. Our formation is breaking apart. Minho stood and extended his hand to the general. Go. Move, General. You can keep fighting and lose more ships, or you can discuss terms. Nexfer looked at the offered hand. Everything he thought he knew about warfare had been turned upside down. These 2 humans had outmaneuvered his entire fleet using nothing but intelligence, creativity, and an understanding of their enemy that went far beyond anything he had imagined possible. Terms, he said finally. A conditional surrender, Minho replied without hesitation. Your fleet withdraws immediately. You leave this system and don't return. And if I refuse, Park's computer showed the tactical display of the space battle. Human ships were systematically destroying Vorthok vessels with precise, devastating attacks. Then, Captain Jin will finish what we started, she said. Your choice, General. General Dexfer watched his fleet die on the tactical display. Captain Jin Daeho and his 3 human ships moved through the Vorthok formation like deadly dancers, striking with impossible precision at exactly the right targets. The battlecruiser, Void Hunter, exploded first, its weapons powered down for the fake maintenance cycle that Lieutenant Park had triggered. The heavy strike followed seconds later, caught completely off guard while investigating a false distress signal. Sir, we need orders, the general's tactical officer pleaded through the communicator. Our ships are being destroyed. Nexfer looked across the table at Captain Lee, Minho, and Lieutenant Park Sora. They sat calmly drinking coffee while his military career crumbled around him. These 2 humans had orchestrated the destruction of one of the finest fleets in the Vorthok Empire. How? He asked quietly. How did you know we would react this way? Minho set down his cup. 'Cause we studied you, General. Not just your weapons or your ships, but your culture. Military doctrine emphasizes efficiency and order. When we sent false maintenance requests, your captains followed protocol. When we broadcast fake distress signals, they responded. As trained, used our own discipline against us. The general realized. That's what humans do, Park said. We turn strengths into weaknesses. Your fleet's perfect coordination became a vulnerability when we fed false information into your command system. Another explosion lit up the tactical display. The battlecruiser Iron Fang vanished in a ball of fire and debris. Sir, the communications officer called frantically. Captain Veltar is requesting permission to retreat. The terrorist claw has lost main power. A Teat strike is reporting massive hull breaches. General Dexfer closed his 4 eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, his expression had changed. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like respect. "I surrender," he said simply. Minho nodded and activated his communicator. "Captain Jin, this is Kepler Station. Dave Vorthok, commander, has agreed to terms." Kada, the voice that came back, was crisp and professional. "Understood, Captain Minho. Ceasing attack runs. All Vorthok vessels are to power down weapons and prepare for escort out of the system." Within minutes, the space battle was over. The surviving Vorthok ships hung motionless in space, their weapons dark and their crews stunned by the speed of their defeat. "I have never seen anything like this," General Dexfer admitted. "In all my years of warfare, I have never encountered tactics like yours." "That's because you've never fought humans before," Park replied. "Most species in the galaxy fight the same way. Big fleets, standard formations, conventional tactics. Humans learn early that conventional tactics get you killed." Minho stood up and walked to one of the viewing ports. Outside, he could see the damaged Vorthok ships beginning their withdrawal from the system. "General, can I ask you something?" he said. "Of course. What will you tell your superiors about what happened here?" Expert considered the question carefully. "I will tell them the truth. That 2 human soldiers held an entire station against thousands of our troops. That they turned our own technology against us. That they coordinated with their fleet to achieve total victory, despite being outnumbered 6-1. "And will they believe you?" Park asked. The general's laugh was bitter. "No. They will think I am making excuses for my failure. It's the idea that individual soldiers could be so effective goes against everything we understand about warfare." "That's probably for the best," Minho said. "The longer other species underestimate humans, the better our chances in future conflicts." General Dexfer gathered his dignity around him like a cloak and stood up. His 2 bodyguards moved to flank him, their weapons lowered in defeat. "Captain Minho, Lieutenant Park, you have taught me something today. I thought I understood war. I was wrong. War isn't about having the biggest army or the best weapons," Minho replied. "It's about adapting faster than your enemy. It's about seeing opportunities where others see obstacles." The general nodded slowly. "Perhaps my species has become too comfortable with our advantages. We have forgotten that survival requires more than just superior firepower." As the Vorthok delegation prepared to leave, Park made one final entry in her mission log. The official report would state that Kepler Station had been successfully defended against enemy attack. It would not mention that 2 people had accomplished what should have required an entire battalion. General Minho called out as the aliens reached the airlock. "One more thing." Dexfer turned back. "The navigation data you wanted. It's already worthless. We changed the hyperspace routes every month. Even if you had captured it, the information would have been outdated within weeks." The general stared at him for a long moment, then shook his head in amazement. "You fought this entire battle to protect data that was already obsolete." "No," Park corrected. "We fought this battle to protect the principle. Some things are worth defending, regardless of their practical value." After the Vorthok departed, Minho and Park sat alone in the central hub of Kepler Station. The emergency lighting had been restored to normal, and the coffee pot still sat on the small table where they had conducted their negotiations. "So," Park said, pouring herself another cup, "what do we put in the official report?" Minho grinned. "The truth. 2 humans successfully defended a research station against overwhelming odds. Let command figure out what that means." 3 days later, a full human fleet arrived at Kepler Station to find the crisis already resolved. Admiral Hans Seogin, the fleet commander, read the battle reports with growing amazement. "Captain," he said over the communication link, "you're telling me that you and Lieutenant Park held off an entire Vorthok invasion force by yourselves?" "Yes, sir," Minho replied. "Though I should mention that Lieutenant Park did most of the technical work. I mainly just blew things up, Captain." This is going to change everything. When word of this spreads through the galaxy, every species is going to want to know how humans fight. Let them wonder, Minho said. The mystery is half our advantage. Within weeks, the story of Kepler Station had spread throughout human space and beyond. Military academies began studying the battle as an example of asymmetric warfare. Other species' intelligence services desperately tried to understand how two individuals could accomplish what entire armies had failed to do. Captain Lee Minho received a promotion and a new assignment to frontier defense. Lieutenant Park Sora was offered a position in fleet intelligence, where her technical skills could be put to use on a larger scale. But perhaps the most important result was what the battle came to represent. Throughout the galaxy, the phrase, "Where's your backup?" became synonymous with human military capability. It reminded everyone that when fighting humans, numbers alone were never enough. The legend of Kepler Station would inspire human soldiers for generations to come and strike fear into the hearts of their enemies. It proved that sometimes the best backup you can have is the knowledge that you don't need any backup at all.